Hello, Comic-Con. How you guys doing today? I'm so excited to be here with you all. We have such an important conversation to have, and seeing all of our incredible panelists has me very excited about what's happening in Hollywood. You are all a part of amazing projects that are about bringing representation in front and behind the camera. So we are going to jump right in. Now, Stephanie, I'm going to hype you up a little bit. I got a bit of a monologue for you. I'm just going to run your resume. You are an award-winning editing. Your award-winning editing work in the highly acclaimed series A Black Lady Sketch Show is truly incredible. The show became the first black woman-led sketch show to receive an Emmy Award for Outstanding Variety Series. And then in 2022, you, alongside Daisha Broadway and Jessica Hernandez, became the first all-woman of color ensemble to receive an Emmy for Outstanding Picture Editing for a variety program. And that's not all, folks. You then made history again in 2022 as the first all-black team to receive an award alongside Robin Wilson, Brandon French, and Taylor Mason. Congratulations. That's an applause. That's an applause. So the question is, after your resume run, what does it mean to you for the show to be making these achievements, and how is that changing the editing and comedy landscapes in your eyes?
Well, first, it's such an honor to be recognized in this way. I think it's something that I never expected to be a part of, and it's something that's just an honor. But at the same time, I also feel like in 2022, this shouldn't be a first, right? Like, we shouldn't be making these kinds of firsts. So I think it's maybe a sign that things are starting to change, but also just that we have a ways to go. As far as editing and comedy goes, though, I think that black women traditionally have been kind of like presented as these 2D versions of themselves, kind of a stereotypical version of what black women actually are. There's so many of us, there's so many types of people out there, and so Robin Thede, our creator, I think really saw this need to just to showcase how many of us there are and what we're like, and show characters that either they're recurring, they have like different nuances and perspectives and things that maybe we haven't seen before on TV, so it's just an honor to be part of that. She always focuses on putting, just diverse people in front of and behind the camera, and I think that's so important in the way that we tell stories, because for me as an editor, my job is to tell something as authentically as I can. And so having a team that is, reflective of the content that you're creating, there's kind of a nuance there, and you have sort of different lenses, and you're able to have this kind of like shorthand amongst each other. So it's, it's really just an honor to be a part of this project.
I'm sure there's a lot of like the nuances you were saying that if somebody else, maybe not of color or of not a diverse background, were in that position, would fall through the cracks. Mm-hmm. And so.
Yeah, I think we've all like seen content where we're like, I know who wasn't in that writer's room, or I know who wasn't maybe behind the scenes on this. So it's just like a really special, just a special show to be able to say that people who, look like what you're seeing are able to provide our voices, and not just kind of have a seat at the table, but have a voice at the table.
Incredible, incredible. All right, so I'm gonna toss it over to George Shaw. I want to talk about Abominable and the Invisible City, which is such an amazing follow-up series to the hit film Abominable, as many of the characters in the show have Chinese backgrounds. How did you bring Chinese cultural influences to the score?
So yeah, it was really wonderful to get to work on something that had my own cultural identity as part of the show. And I was lucky. I got interested in this stuff in my 20s. So I actually studied Chinese instruments, and I actually played some of them. And so when I got the show, it's about these magical Chinese creatures that appear, and then the team of people help these creatures out in tough situations. So definitely it was an opportunity to explore those Chinese sounds in the music, and as well as combining it with the traditional like DreamWorks animated sound, which is a lot of orchestra, but mashing the two together was just so much fun for me.
I love it. I love it. All right, so we actually have two Georges. I'm sure you noticed. I'm gonna move over to George Salinas now. I hear you're doing some amazing work bringing the Latinx stories to the forefront. Can you give us some insight into what you're doing with Cheeto Comics, a Latino-owned publisher, and Andy Ruiz Jr., the first Mexican heavyweight champion.
Absolutely. So, Cheeto Comics is like my little baby. It's been a headache. It's been great. It's been down and up, for the last 2 years now. But about a month ago, we just finished the first round of funding. So we're going to see now their library come to existence probably next year, mid-next year. You're going to see a bunch of new characters coming out. We have at least 10, 15 books that we're thinking of coming out with next year, which is going to be fantastic. I don't know if it's true or not, but from what I've seen in the industry, I haven't seen yet another publishing, diverse company owned that they're doing their own, creative and the way that creating these great characters. And then Andy Ruiz, he's just a badass. I mean, I love boxing, so I was trying to diversify a little bit off of my formats that I do. So Andy Ruiz was just the perfect guy to do this. I mean, the guy who grew up in Imperial Valley, parents are immigrants, underdog, boxer. Nobody thought he was going to be anything. So when he knocked out Anthony Joshua, that was it. He became who he became. So for myself, I was like, we need to tell this story. So we're going to do 2 parts. We're going to do a feature film and a docuseries. That is going to be fantastic. And really excited, actually, because this is probably the first in this kind. So, which would be really fun. So, yeah.
I'm excited because I feel like we've done panels before, and every time we bring up Cheeto Comics, and I always hear you talking about, like, okay, but when? Because I want it.
Yeah, finally it happened. So, which is fantastic. It's saying the times are changing.
Yeah.
Because 10 years ago, I started as a representative. So 15 years ago, it was hard for me just to sell anyone who was color. It was just one of those things. Now it's just an open area that the opportunity is there. So now we're just maximizing it, and hopefully, we do it right.
Good, and I'm sure you will. We're gonna toss it over to Monica. Monica, as a writer for both series Lost and Gentified, how did you incorporate characters that spoke languages other than English, and what is the importance of using subtitles with the ever-increasing popularity of non-English language films and television?
So Lost was my rookie gig in TV, and it was created by Damon Lindelof and J.J. Abrams, and they had 2 Korean characters, Sun and Jin, and it was so powerful for me as a writer because I'm half African American and half Korean American, and I'd never seen Korean characters on network television, and then they were subtitled, which I think was a big risk for the network because they were like, are people going to tune out? Are they not going to watch the show because they're subtitled? There was this perception that you have to work harder when you're watching something with subtitles, but we all go see foreign films and we don't have a problem watching that. So it was huge that ABC took that risk. And with Hentified, it was really important to the story and to the creators, Marvin and Linda, to have Pops, who was the grandfather, speaking Spanish the majority of the time, and to have him subtitled as well, and that there would always be moments between Pops and his grandchildren where they would be speaking Spanish, and then the 2 grandchildren would switch and be speaking English. And it's just how life is, especially if my mother's Korean was spoken in the home. There were times when her and my father, who's African American, he spoke Korean, they would speak in rapid fire Korean, so I couldn't understand what they were saying. So it's really important to make the characters authentic. And I think, I'm so proud that was my rookie gig, and then to be able to do it again on Hentified. It's important. I think the shows that we watch should reflect the world that we live in. And people speak in different languges. So I think it's powerful to see that.
That parent rapid fire thing, my parents do that to me in Spanish all the time. And
Yeah.
I'm going to move to Danny. Danny, you founded CALICO, an BIPOC-owned and filmmaker-driven production company and agency. Can you tell us about why you founded CALICO?
I wish there were more costumes in here. Shout out to that dude right there.
Let's go!
It works. I'm gonna age myself. I got into business at a time where stories of minority people were not appreciated, right, at all. We were told that these stories could only belong on maybe like Screen Gems or maybe MTV, but that's about it. So really it was kind of a call to action. It was a response to the very little support and infrastructure people of color had. So I built the house to protect the story, quite frankly. And also I had certain filmmaker tastes, and it was my ability to create something that was an extension of that. So it was really just a survival tactic. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about trying to build a brand. It was really like, nobody's going to look out for us unless one of us looks out for us. And so that's the reason.
Wow.
Pure simple.
That's like really important. I was expecting some kind of answer like that, but like with the one of us has to protect whew,
Yeah.
this guy. I'm gonna pass it to George Shaw, who is also part of furthering diversity within the composer community and the industry. George, can you tell us about your work with Composers Diversities Collective?
Yeah, so I'm on the executive committee of the Composers Diversity Collective. We actually crunched the numbers over the last few years, and
What did they say? Tell us about the numbers.
that and this is in more recent years, the composing industry has been almost 80 to 90% male and white.
Shocking.
Yeah. So it's literally actually far less diverse than a lot of the other
Sure.
fields in entertainment. So, we realized there was definitely a need for something to change. And fortunately, Michael Abels, who's our president, and you probably know him as the guy who composes music for Jordan Peele's movies, he just decided, hey, we see each other at events, let's get everyone together to hang out. And so that kind of was the beginning of this, and it was only 4 years ago. And since then we've formed, first of all, a community. I think that's important to have people who can support you, people who can also mentor up-and-coming people, as well as just getting the word out to the studios, because so often they've said, well, we wanted to hire diverse, but we couldn't find anyone. And that's because they're looking in all the places where we haven't been yet.
Sure.
So how are you going to find us? So so we've actually created an online directory of amazing composers. A lot of us are, like myself, just in the last few years have gotten some pretty big gigs, and so now we're kind of on the map now. And so things are actually slowly changing. So it's really great to see that change beginning to happen, but obviously there's still a lot more we could do.
Incredible.
Plug the website.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, give us a website. Where can we learn more about this?
So if you want to find a composer, besides calling me,
Obviously. You'd be top of the list.
you can go to composersdiversitycollective.org, and we have a whole online directory. You can read people's bios, hear samples of their music, and they're all amazingly wonderful.
Incredible. Everyone go check it out, or I will find you. Yes, applause. Thank you. All right, Stephanie, I want you to talk about your work with Girls Empowerment Sierra Leone.
Sure. So Girls Empowerment Sierra Leone is an organization I've been on the board for about 10 years. That's when we started. Sierra Leone's where my family's from. It is an organization that's basically working with girls age 11 to 16, teaching them sort of leadership skills, but more importantly, how to be advocates within their communities. I think a lot of times what you see with NGOs is they go into a space, they maybe provide some sort of assistance and then leave, and it kind of just leaves the people of the location off, on their own. So the purpose of this is kind of to let these girls create sort of a self-sustaining model where all of our programming is year-round, but they determine what it is they need to learn, whether it's public speaking, leadership, and then they figure out an issue within their community that they want to fight for and be sort of social impact, activists for. So 1 year, female genital mutilation, FGM, was the topic that they decided they wanted to focus on. So they spent a whole year basically talking to Parliament, talking to within their communities, creating sort of these sister circle mentorship groups where they could just talk about this issue in a very real way. They filmed PSAs. They were on the radio for this. So it's just an organization that's basically built for them to be able to create the world that they want, and become future leaders.
Wow. I feel like your guys' schedules must be insane. Monica and George Salinas, with your guys' experiences as executive producers on MacGyver and Julie and the Phantoms, respectively, how do you use your role to create an inclusive environment for in front of the and behind the camera cast and crew?
So MacGyver was a show that I inherited. I came on season 5 to co-show run it, and then eventually was the sole showrunner. So the cast was the cast, and thankfully it was a pretty diverse cast. In front of the camera, in terms of guest stars, and we did prioritize BIPOC and women, and then behind the camera, you know, I made a concerted effort to pull in directors that I had worked with before. On Hentified, we pulled in Andrew On to direct an episode. We also pulled in Anne Renton. So for a big network action show, we had diversity, we had women directors, and our numbers were so high by the end of the season that we won an award for in terms of female leadership behind the camera, which I was really, really proud of. And then in terms of the room, I also inherited that staff, but I got to work with a really talented writer, Teresa Huang, who I'd also worked with many years ago on Knight Rider. And we had, I think, for an action show on network TV, it was myself, Alessia Constantini, Stephanie, and Teresa, 4 female writers. So I always try to create a room that reflects the world. You know, there were some limitations there because I was inheriting the staff, but I kind of learned that lesson from Lost, my first season in television, writing for TV, Damon, on a network show. There were 4 women on that staff as well, which was unusual in 2004.
I was going to say, for both of those, that sounds like a huge rarity. Like
It was. Yeah, it was a rarity. I mean, I knew because I was a writer's assistant on 24 before I got the job on Lost, and there were no female writers at all on the show when I was there. And so to get a job on a big J.J. Abrams show and to walk in the room and there were 3 other women who were there was a co-producer, there were people at different levels, was very rare at the time. Yeah.
Wow. George, how about you?
On my end, you know, I'm not a talented writer like Monica. I'm a producer. So my thing, it was always, when I started this company, was how do I get to the decision table? I think that was the most important thing for me. And I found a niche for it, which was bringing existing TV shows from around the world and bringing them here, which I have the rights to. So pretty much the studios and streamers have to do kind of what I want. So Julie and the Phantoms came about in Madison, who's Julie. We were gung-ho that she had to be new and Latina. And so in a mix also to that, it's a girl that you see that's your cousin, your sister, friend, whatever. And we found her in Pittsburgh. She did a videotape off of just herself in front of her house. And we fought for her through the whole thing at Netflix. And the whole point to that was we wanted to make it authentic as much as we could. Even in front of the camera and behind the camera was the same thing. We found some incredible writers, new writers. So we are always developing new writers that have, you know, let's say 1 credit or 2, but because the power of IP, we're able to force the studios and streamers and say, nope, it has to be with them and them only. So
Good.
pretty much that's the biggest thing. I mean, is it a fight every day? It's always a fight.
Sure.
It's never they're always going to give you a list of people they want, you know. But again, when you have the rights to IP, you know, it's kind of hard for them to tell you no.
I love it.
Can I ask a follow-up question to you guys? I find that, you know, the big obstacle for people underrepresented who are particularly more starting out, we don't always have the resume that others do. How do people in that situation overcome that?
I read a lot.
The IP.
Yeah, I read a lot. I read scripts. I read new scripts. I read scripts from students. I read scripts from friends that they say, you know, my friend's talented. So I'm always trying to find that new cool voice, because, you know, the IP, it's already there. It's already proven. So studios and streamers already love that. The risk is gone. the risk of, okay, we need to develop a new person. So for me, it's just basically, if I read and I like it, it's done. I'll fight until we get it done. So, to find someone, it's true. Just keep sending your stuff until somebody reads it.
Good advice, good advice. This question is going to be for everybody, but we're going to start with Danny. Everyone on this panel is working hard to push our communities further. My question to everyone who wants to answer, you don't have to, is what kind of legacy do you hope to leave in your work? And Danny, we are going to start with you. That's a massive question.
It is a big question.
So while your brain works, this is me stalling. This is me just entertaining the crowd.
No, I mean, I guess, I grew up in LA, I grew up around a lot of culture, therefore my interests naturally stem from that, right? And I think the legacy I want to leave specifically is that people who can relate to the material I create feel like they've been seen, feel like they've been heard. Also, I want to make sure that, as earnest as it sounds, that I've helped people. Like you pull people up and pull people forward. Like Stephanie, for instance, you're an editor. There's not a lot of people of color in the tech industry, in the tech roles, like DPs, editors, and that's one area that we really need to sort of build people up, and that comes with, crew that are department heads, right? So we need more of that. But that's the legacy I want to leave. That it was better than when I got into the business, because it was terrible when I got in.
Absolutely. Anybody else want to answer said question?
I'll jump in.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think along with what Danny said is, I literally never saw an Asian composer growing up outside of films from Asia.
Sure.
So, fortunately for me, I actually didn't realize this until much later. So it didn't discourage me. But I think now that I'm sort of in a leadership position, I'm seeing a lot of younger people of color trying to enter the composing world. It inspires them just to see someone that looks like them to be doing what they want to do. So I mean, that's great. The other thing is I want to write something like Star Wars where as soon as someone hears the theme, they know what it is. That's the other thing that I think every composer
Some kind of big legacy melody or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Yes, please.
I think it comes down to 3 words for me: leadership, inclusivity, and kindness. So leadership. When people ask me what's my favorite show that I've worked on, I say MacGyver, and people are like, "What?" And it's a couple of things, but the primary reason is because I grew up in this industry. I started as an action writer, where I was usually the only woman, and usually only the only woman of color in the room, and when they approached me about MacGyver, it had nothing to do with me being black or Korean or a woman. It was just an action show on one of the oldest of the old guard networks. And so it's like, hell yeah, I'm gonna take that job. Because when I was coming up in the business, I looked at the trades, and it was Pam Visay who ran CBS shows, who was a black woman, who ran shows that had nothing to do with her race. And I want to help other writers get to the top. I want to help other writers of color and women get to the top to run shows, because that's where the power is. Just like you were saying, the power is in the IP and being a producer. But the power of a showrunner is you get to pick your staff, get to pick your cast, you get to pick your department heads. And so I want to groom other writers to get to that leadership position. Inclusivity, I also want to see that in the room and behind the camera. When I staff a show, I want to make sure the writer's room looks like the world. And so there are a lot of networks and studios now that have diversity mandates, and people feel uncomfortable about that. I'm like, well, you didn't feel uncomfortable the last 20 years when there was like one of us in the room? So yeah, so I like working for studios and networks that prioritize that. And then the last one is kindness. I want to create a culture of kindness, because I came up on a lot of shows where the room wasn't kind, where I would feel demoralized if I didn't pitch like an A+ pitch. The culture of the room was just like, pick yourself up. And I, a lot of times, had to be one of the guys. There was a show that I worked on, I won't name the show, for multiple seasons. I never wore a dress, I never got a manicure. I tried to just be one of the guys, and I would wear t-shirts and baggy jeans. And then when I got pregnant, it was like, oh, I couldn't really hide that anymore. So I want to create a culture where, you don't have to have your best day in the room to know that you're a valued member of the team. And I feel like so much of our work is like, it's about the product, it's about the show. No, you know what? It's really about the people. So that's what I understand.
I was gonna just piggybacking off of what George and Danny were saying. It was 10 years maybe of editing before I met another Black editor. Like, I thought I was the only one. We just simply, the world of post is unfortunately very, very not diverse. And so I think the power that we have, like, once we're in this position, is to just say people's names in rooms that they're not in. I think, speaking also, George, to what you were saying earlier, is like a lot of times studios will be like, oh yeah, we looked and we couldn't find anybody. Like, we didn't know that anyone existed. So
every time I don't want to interrupt you, but every
Yeah.
time I hear that, it makes me crazy because I'm like, the planet? Did you search? Where did you search? There's an abundance of people on this planet, I guarantee you.
yeah, it's wild to me. There's even, like, I see some amazing Black editors in this room, actually. So it's like, we're here, we're all out here. So I think the best thing we can do is just make sure those names are heard, because, like, we don't want that to ever be an excuse again. So I would say, as far as, like, legacy goes, I just hope that I can be the representation that I never had, and I hope that the stories I tell can be as authentic as possible, I think that's also the value in what we're able to do.
I have another. If George, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to say quickly. I mean, like everyone's saying, it's so true. I mean, what Dan was just saying, it's true. 15 years ago, it sucked, but now we have the opportunity to do this. And my whole goal is, let not the color be, just let the idea and the talent talk. That's it. I mean, it's just what it is. It's what this art industry is the best show, the best pitch, the best actor, the best editor wins. Doesn't matter where they come from or anything. So that's what we're trying to portray, is saying, we found someone in Michigan. It's like, yeah, they're talented as well. They don't have to be from LA all the time.
Yeah. Okay, so we've touched a little bit on this question, but if anybody has anything they want to add, this is for everybody as well. And we'll start on this side this time, move that way. What do you think we can do to uplift and empower unrepresented voices in front and behind the camera? In addition to everything that we've already been kind of talking about.
I mean, I think, other than obviously just making sure people's names are heard, I think, I'm in the position where I can hire, like, an assistant editor who's maybe a woman of color, or just from a different underrepresented community. I can give post producers the names of people who they might not know, who can come join whatever team that I'm on. I think all we can do is just fight for this to continue to be something that gets improved, and it's slowly getting there. And I think that often, like, studios, especially lately, it's like there was this push for diversity, but I don't know that execs necessarily understand why that's important yet. It's kind of like you get put there, but it's more like for the optics, like, oh, we found somebody. So I think, yeah, sorry, I totally got sidetracked from the question, but I think, yeah, the best thing we can do is just try to encourage people to keep doing what they're doing, and, like, make sure that we can see them and other people see them, so that there aren't people who have maybe shorter resumes that aren't getting that chance.
Sure. Anybody else?
Yeah, my end would be just keep fighting. Doesn't matter where you come from. I come from South Central, so I didn't have anyone in my family who was in the entertainment industry, none of that. I had to figure it out. That was in the age of I had to go to the library and ask people, for jobs. Now you can YouTube and Google anything. So just keep fighting. If you have an idea, if you're an actor, if you're behind or in front of the camera, just keep going. There's going to be someone who's going to respond. It's just the way it is. We all started this way, So I say keep fighting. They'll get discouraged, because you're going to get a bunch of no's. Even in this level, I still get a ton of no's, even though you go, wow, we have a great, beautiful package with great, talented people who won awards and everything. You still get that no. You still get the rejection. So just get used to that and just keep fighting. I mean, you'll find your path.
I agree with everything that's been said. I would say another thing I was just on a panel yesterday, and it was a class of like people who just got out of college and were trying to break in, and I was like, network, like come to panel discussions, look up things at the Writers Guild Foundation. They're always doing activities, and a lot of them are open to the general public, not just to members of the Writers Guild. And look up other organizations in entertainment, like CAPE, Coalition of Asian Pacific Islanders in Entertainment. They're always doing activities. They're having, panel discussions, some of them at the Guild, and just expand your network, because I feel like I kind of broke in because I was taking a class at UCLA Extension at night, and there was a woman in my class who knew that I was had been an assistant, who was getting ready to go on vacation and needed someone to cover her desk while she was on vacation. So I covered her desk, and her boss, Paul Shapiro, made a call for me that changed my life when it was time to go up for staffing, and he helped get me the job on 24 as a writer's assistant. All of that from a UCLA extension class that I took, just, because all of us became friends afterwards. Sure. I was like, you never know who was going to be the person who opens the door from you. I never thought it would have been Samantha Pavarelli and her boss, Paul Shapiro, but from temping, I was just temping at the time. So we'll just say have your posse, because you're all gonna break in around the same time, and you're all gonna rise together and pay it forward and help each other out.
So we're dipping a little bit into my next question about, let me see, advice for anybody up and coming. But before we get there, is there anything else we can do to uplift and empower unrepresented voices in front of and behind the camera, I guess, pertaining to the last question?
So yes, I mean, the main thing is just hire us. That's just that. Literally, it took me 20 years to get my first TV show. Struggling on low budget indie stuff. So obviously, we need more people like Monica and George and Danny. But even for myself, when I'm hiring my team, I try to hire young up and coming Asian composers who. No one was there to hire me when I was starting out, so yeah. I'm trying to pay it forward, and really you have to sort of mentor that next generation who will then go on, and be the new Monicas and who are going to hire more people. So I mean, it really has to happen at all levels of the industry.
Everyone at home watching this, hire us. Anybody else want to add anything before we get into our advice question?
I mean, for me, it's really taking risks, right? It's really trying to mine new talent whenever you can. Really take the time and meet people. We have a program at Calico. Every semester we do college interns. And we're always trying to bring up people of color, and it's so easy to fall back on the resumes. I mean, in the hiring process, to fall back on the tried and true resumes. Really just try to take a risk on people. Identify what they could be good at, their interests, and try to give them a role. It might not be the role that they want, but you just need to try to get people involved in a project, and then they'll grow and learn and evolve from there. So it's just getting in there. It's getting in the ecosystem.
Okay. So now to our last question. I want to end the panel on a kind of inspirational note to everybody. In addition to the advice given by George and Monica, does anybody have, let's see, members looking to break into the entertainment industry and make their voices heard and story seen, what's one piece of advice you would like to give them? Anybody?
Be annoying. Just be persistent. Yep. A lot of times, a cold email, a cold phone call, a handshake, you might be annoying, but get in their face and really hone your craft. Do that before you start putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
But also be nice when you're being annoying.
Be annoyingly nice.
Well, I would say, you have to be prepared when the opportunity comes. So in order to be prepared, you have to work on your craft. You got to take classes, you practice, you do small projects, do anything and everything you can, even creating your own projects, just to work on your craft and get that experience, so that when someone comes and says, I want to hire you, you are ready for that.
Amen. Yeah. Amen. Any additional advice, even from you guys as well, if you have thought of something? Or?
Yeah, I think just piggybacking a little bit off of you guys, just like create things. It doesn't matter what it is, even if that opportunity isn't there. Sometimes we have to create those spaces for ourselves because they just aren't there. Like I always think of Issa Rae, for example. Like that space wasn't there for her, and she created a YouTube channel that just blew up. So, you know, it's more just a matter of not only practicing, but, you know, kind of creating this space for yourself. You know, there's room for all of us, so just make that space exist, and network laterally, because I think, you know, obviously we all want to like reach out to whoever it is that's, say, like an exec, hey, hire me, but, you know, work with people around you who are trying to do the same thing or have like-minded goals, because you guys will all rise up together. And yeah, I just think that's really important for what we do.
So we have a little bit of extra time to do audience questions. So if you guys have been itching to ask something, it could be to any of the individuals about any projects they've done or a general question. Now would be the time. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of keep talking until I see a hand come up. Yes.
For Monica, as a writer and producer, what was your first approach at show running, and how was that, your first experience?
My first time running a show was season 2 of Queen Sugar. I got the job mainly because when I met with Ava, and I didn't think I was going to get the job, I've said this before, because my manager repped other women who were going up for the position who had started before me and who I admired. But when I met with Ava and I told her about my experience on Deception that Liz Heldens ran, and when Liz got another show picked up, she asked me to run post for her. And I had never done that before. I'd done a lot of post because I'd worked for showrunners. A lot of showrunners like to do post by themselves. But I had worked for a couple of bosses who were like, no, you go sit with the editor. Like, I'm going to sit with you for the first time, and then you're going to take over and take everyone through the notes and do the scoring session, do everything. And so when I got to run post for Liz, because she had her hands full, she was launching a summer show, I got a body of experience that most women at my level, at co-EP level, did not have. So that helped push me over the edge. And then it's weird. People ask me like, oh my gosh, were you nervous when you took over? It was your first time running a show. Like, how did you feel? And I was like, I felt prepared. I honestly had climbed every rung of the ladder, repeated levels. I did like over 40 episodes as a staff writer because I had to repeat from Lost to Prison Break, and then I did at co-producer. I think I did like 3 season, 4 produced episodes. So I had repeated levels, and by the time I got to run a show, I think I had been climbing the ladder for like 12 years. So I was prepared, and I had bosses that delegated experience to me that allowed me to sort of do every piece of the pie so I could then make my own pie. So, and I think the best part of that job was after working in network TV for so long, where there were very few characters of color, except for maybe on Lost, that I was running a show and writing a show about a black family. Like, that was so powerful to me. That was character driven. It wasn't, you know, they ran a drug ring or something. You know, it wasn't that. It was not stereotypical. It was about a black family who owned land in a red state. So I was so blown away to be able to do that, and yet I felt completely prepared.
Yes, this is a question in the back.
Hi. My question is about another area of access, and I imagine if Evan was able to join here, he probably would have talked about this. So in terms of, 1 in 4 adults in the U.S. have a disability. And so oftentimes, just like you mentioned that you had 12 years before you got your chance, that often happens to individuals with disabilities, where we constantly are just thrown back to the beginning. And oftentimes it's because of a perception or the lack of access even to get in the room to interview. Like a wheelchair user couldn't get up, lack of ASL interpreters, etc. So for folks who have the skill sets and the desire and the drive, advice for how to kind of get to that next step, because there's just clearly a lack of access to it.
Anyone?
I would say some of the programs, Because the programs, and I can only speak as a writer, and someone else can chime in terms of the other areas. But in terms of the programs in town, they're kind of like gatekeepers. There's a CBS mentorship program. There's the Warner Brothers program, which I'm not sure if that still exists or is being reformed. There's Fox has a program. I came up through the Fox program. And I think because they're diversity programs and disability is part of diversity, that's kind of like those programs, they will mentor you, they will give you access, and then they will help you get staffed on a show. And with the Fox program, their caveat was, if you don't get staffed, we'll help you get a writer's assistant job, which is the jump seat. And it was the 1-2 punch of Paul Shapiro making the call, but I happened to be in the Fox program. That's how I got the job on 24. And so if you can get into one of those programs or get into a mentorship program, that it doesn't necessarily have to be part of a studio network. Right now I'm doing Mentorship Matters, and that is a mentoring program that's not affiliated with any studio or network, but when you sign on to be a mentor, you're basically saying, whoever I choose to mentee, I will either staff, help them get representation, or make a call to one of my showrunner friends to get them staffed. So there are programs out there that will really push and advocate for people who have sort of not had access traditionally.
Yeah, just to add on, there's the Universal Composers Initiative for composers. That's actually how I got Abominable. And I know there's like Rise Up Animation. If you want to get into animation, that's a great mentorship program. And there's just so many others. So like Google them.
Yeah, editorially, I know there's like the ACE Diversity Mentorship Program and a lot as well. So every area has something.
I think we have time for a few more. Let's do you, and then I think that may be kaput for us. But yes.
My question for George Salinas. I like you. I'm from South Central. I'm a writer. I do comics, and through one of my books, I got a rep, and now I'm like getting into screenwriting, and I'm like writing pilot after pilot after pilot after pilot, and they're good. The rep is from Free Arts. He really believes me, and I've gotten books published before, but I just feel so stuck. Like I just can't let it break. And I keep asking, like, okay, like, is this one good? Oh, it's good, but you know, I feel like he's just like ignoring me. I don't know. I just
That's kind of what all reps do most of the time.
And so I don't know. I guess just I feel like I share a lot with you in that sense, and yeah, I don't know.
I mean, the one thing is, look, this is the mistake a lot of people don't understand is the reps are going to do as much as they can. They have clients, obviously, right? They have the tier clients, they have the middle clients, and they have clients that they're developing or whatever, right? Trying to get them out, get work. You fit pretty much that. So I always say is you have to do the other percentage a lot more. Reps can only do as much when it comes to that. I say is just find out, even from them, who's looking for what we call mandates. This is what's normally what it is the studio's mandates. They'll tell you what each studio streamer is looking for. If they can share that with you, you can start figuring out the scripts that you're writing, where do they fit. Start looking who's the VP of development, programming, whatever. Send them a nice letter, because everyone's looking for writers, diversity writers especially. So you're in a great opportunity right now. If you send something to someone, it might get read right away. And you might get a meeting, and they might start saying, hey, we loved your writing. It's not for us, but we have other projects that you might fit or things that you could develop for them. So always, you have to do the bigger part in the beginning. And then everything just starts going in, where it needs to go. And best advice is rely on your reps, obviously, because of your reps, but start looking to see, where you can start sending your scripts and how and stuff like that. So.
And then our last question in the back.
Hi. So I used to teach pre-K, now I teach second grade. And during the pandemic, like the storyteller, I decided I wanted to do audio drama. That's what I came up on. I like audio dramas. Back when there were radio dramas before podcasts. And so I did, and I got lucky enough to partner with voice actors who are like, in the industry, they do like McDonald's commercials, so like they're like actual actors. And so we have our kids show, we've done like fantasy stuff, and like we're really expanding. And one of my actors, he plays sometimes the shows for his kids, and his kids like, oh, I would really want to see this. I really want to see that too. However, I have no idea how to make that happen. So I'm curious your thoughts on like practices, strategies, things to know I'm getting something adapted essentially from like audio drama to perhaps like animation.
Build the audience. Number one, make sure the platform grows and it's undeniable as a piece of IP, right? So I would concentrate on that, kind of like the Issa Rae model, right? She went on YouTube, created Awkward, and so start there. And then if it's undeniable, then it'll be an easy transition into adapting it elsewhere.
I have a random piece of advice as a content creator. There's sometimes a lot of other creators out there at your level that like they just animate and they're like, I don't have any voice actors, I don't have a story, I don't have whatever, and I would like to do something of that, and they have their own circle of friends that do that, and you'd be really surprised how many or how accessible that is. And if you have your audio drama and it's all like, you know, beginning to end done, and you're able to reach out to somebody else with a following or maybe looking for work in that sense to then create something that would then get the audience, like a bigger audience that becomes undeniable, maybe so. I don't know.
It sounds like if you just find an animator, and you just turn those audio dramas into some sort of YouTube series.
Anyway, though, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much to our panelists, Stephanie, George, Salinas, George Shaw, Monica, and Danny for being here with us today to discuss what you guys are doing to push diversity further in Hollywood. Also, thank you to Impact 24 PR and, of course, LA Comic-Con for putting this panel together, and to all of you guys for joining. Don't go anywhere. Impact 24 has another exciting panel right after this that I'm moderating. It's happening in just a few minutes in this room with creatives behind X, Pearl, and Weird, the Al Yankovic story, and more. So stay tuned. We love you guys, and have a good rest of your Comic-Con.